welcome to another Capital Ideas. I'm Sandy Bahan, and our guest this week is Linda Sexton, a member of the Norman School Board. Welcome.
Nice to be here.
Thank you. We've been on before, and it's been probably at least a year since we visited, and a lot has happened since then and is in the midst of happening as we speak. But we never really actually talk about what you do besides being a member of the Norman School Board. You work at the Firehouse Art Center, is that correct?
I do.
And what's your responsibilities there?
I do all the writing and ad layouts and publicity, give tours, answer questions, and then we all do lots of little administrative details. It's kind of a real teamwork place to be.
Okay, how long have you worked there?
3 years.
3 years. What got you to what drew you, I guess, is what I want to say, to the firehouse?
Actually, the person that had the job before I did thought I'd be good at it, and when it was open, she called, and there I was.
Okay. Now, you're a school board mom. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You have 4 children at different levels
Right.
in the Norman Public Schools. What prompted you to run for the school board?
Some teachers. I got a call from a teacher group looking for someone who I think they said was politically aware and loved kids.
Okay.
And I thought, well, I meet those 2 qualifications, so.
And you're currently in your 2nd term, right?
Right.
I think I saw on something that came out from the League of Women Voters that your term ends in 2000 or 2001,
Right.
something
In 2000.
like that. Okay, so you're going to move into the next century,
Mm-hmm.
if you will, with this. Now, you've been on the board since the beginning of the transition process, the decision to go to 2 four-year high schools, the decision to close down West and Central as mid-highs and change them into middle schools,
Right.
all of that. Where are we in that transition process?
We're right in the tense part. It's getting really close to happening, and our teachers have all sent in survey forms telling where they want to go, what grade level they'd like to teach, what subjects that they're qualified for that they'd like to teach, and a committee has begun sorting data so that we hope we can assign teachers to their first choice, if at all possible, and yet come out with a balanced staff so that we don't end up with all experienced teachers one place and all inexperienced teachers one place, or all our English teachers at one school and all our math teachers at another. All kinds of balancing acts that have to take place to get that done. But that creates a lot of uncertainty for teachers right now.
Yes, it does. I can attest to that. But you also have 2 or 3 different citizens advisory groups working to make decisions as well. I know one is working on one did work on the boundary issues, and another one is currently working on transfer policy. What other kinds of decisions still need to be made or revisited, perhaps?
I believe most of the decisions are made except for transfer policy. There are questions about, particularly for next year's seniors, whether they'll be grandfathered into staying at the school where they are, if that's what they want to do. I think some of them are just more than happy to go be the first graduating class of Norman High School North, and others really want to stay where they've been. So that'll be one of the issues that committee is one of the issues that committee's looking at. Plus, just how to maintain a balanced student body through the life of high school, so that the balancing act that was done by the boundary committee doesn't get undone over 2 or 3 years by transfer, so that somehow we keep just a balanced student body in numbers, in socioeconomics, in all the kinds of things you look at in student bodies to try to keep them as balanced as they can be so that opportunities stay the same.
Now, once those citizens advisory councils have their meetings, and I know they had several public hearings at the different schools in the area, come back and make their recommendations, and then you allowed input from the community still at the school board meetings. The politics of all of that, how does the board finally reach a decision? Do you generally go with what the advisory board recommends, or have you in the past moved away from those decisions?
I think we have pretty well stuck with Citizens Advisory Council recommendations, maybe modified here and there a little bit, but those recommendations are based on months of research and discussion and give and take and opinions that started here and moved to here and started here and moved to here among that large group of people, so that the recommendations we get are usually pretty well-reasoned, sound recommendations, and there's not much reason to change what they've suggested that we do. That's so far. Now, if they recommended something that was financially impossible, or the legislature makes some directive and changes the focus we have to take, then obviously we wouldn't take everything they gave us and just close our eyes and vote. we'll look at it and think about it. But for the most part, we've found, at least I have found, and I think I can speak for the others, that the months of research and reason and give and take and debate come out with pretty sound recommendations.
Now, you brought up an interesting group that's always going to throw you a curve just when you least expect it, known as the legislature. In the last 2 years, the board has been faced with the decision of cutting back staff, cutting back certainly spending, if you will, and however you choose to make those cuts. How does that impact the opening of a new high school?
Well, we believe we're through the cuts. The big problem for us this year was a big increase in teacher retirement contribution from all school districts. And had the legislature passed a bill to give money to districts to meet that higher payment, but then they didn't just write a check and say, your payment is $500,000, here's $500,000. They put it through the formula, which meant if your increased payment was $500,000, if you're an urban school district, you may have gotten only $450,000, and then some other school someplace else profited, got a bigger payment than what their increased teacher retirement payment was going to be. That funding formula is made to try to make up for differences in expenses of running school, but when it was just an in and out payment, it didn't make any sense to do it that way, but they did it that way. So we took a hit there, and then we took a hit with the change in gifted and talented funding, and it all came the same year. Now, we can almost safely assume that those kinds of things won't happen, and certainly not in the same year anymore, and that as the state grows, revenues will stay the same or grow a little, and the expenses of the transition will be, we can't close our eyes and pretend they're not there, but I think over the long haul, it's not going to be a huge difference once it settles in, and we've got a good carryover to help us meet any emergencies or things nobody thought of. I hope there aren't any of those. But we do have a carryover, which we've been carefully guarding and trying to build and maintain at a safe level, so that when things do come up, we're not in the position of not being able to go to the savings account.
And the bond issues have passed every year.
And we're very grateful for that. I think the community supports education. The educators in the community appreciate that, but I think the educators in the community earn that also.
Okay. Is there any, you work locally. Your job is to make decisions regarding the local schools in the district in which you live. But realistically, you have to have help from the legislature to do that. And one of the areas that I understand the legislature doesn't give you much direct help for is capital funding.
Right.
Like, is there any move afoot to try and get some kind of assistance from the legislature to help pay for the buildings we've got to have and the things that just the capital funding you have to make the schools function?
And what I'd like to see is direct help from the state financially. What's more likely to happen someday is a change in the rules for how we can borrow money and do our own local financing. The state limits how much a community can go into debt for school buildings. And in communities with lots of growth, or in communities with lots of government-owned property that doesn't contribute to the property tax base, there need to be changes in how we're allowed to approach funding issues. Now, it'd be much nicer if the legislature would play Santa and say, gosh, y'all have grown a lot, here's some money. And in a way, I think that maybe is what ought to be done, but it probably won't be. So the next best thing is to change the rules at the local level so that a community could choose, wouldn't have to, but could choose to bond more money.
Okay, now Norman fits both of those categories. We're a
Right.
growing district, and we're a district that needs, well, that has lots of government property that doesn't contribute to the tax base. But in the growth prospects, the midterm adjustment, will there be any midterm adjustments this year for us?
I haven't heard what our statistics are, but the legislature has changed the rules there so that you don't have to have as huge a growth to benefit from midterm, and I think we'll probably get something small.
Okay. You've been out to Norman North?
I've been there, I've walked around. It's nice and new. It's not luxurious, but obviously being new, it feels really nice inside. And it's big, really feels big, I'll give it that for sure.
And the plan was for Longfellow students to move into the completed portion so that then the Longfellow portion can be renovated to match.
And that move has been set back a week or two, but I don't think it's going to be enough to hurt the overall schedule.
Okay.
either for the Longfellow kids now or for the completion of the buildings.
Okay. So we're looking at being able to move in the fall with no problems.
So far, that's what I hear.
Okay. What excites you about this change?
I think what excites me about the whole idea of four-year high schools, well, there are several things. One is mentoring in drama, in music, in lots of, even in the academic subjects. I think when younger kids can see the teachers and the students who are doing the more sophisticated kinds of things, it helps them know what they'd like to do. It helps them be what they'd like to be because they can model after older students. I think it will give much more opportunity for kids to stay involved in athletics, in drama, in music. We're going to have, twice as many plays, twice as many debate teams, twice as many all kinds of things. So that a lot of kids who thought, oh, I'll never get to do that, will now think, hey, maybe if I work hard I can do that. And I think we'll keep some kids involved that otherwise might not only not stay involved in that, but not stay involved at school at all. Counselors will be able to see kids in the 9th grade and watch them through to 12th grade and have a better idea who needs what kinds of help and guidance. And I think the continuity of a 9 through 12 school is going to do kids a lot of good once we get over the fears and the adjustments. I think it's going to work out wonderfully.
Okay, when you work in the community as at the Firehouse Arts Center, which is a community-based facility, you have 4 children in different levels of the schools, and just because you're a school board member, you probably get lots of phone calls or people bend your ears in the grocery stores. Does the community share that kind of excitement, or do you hear a different kind of thing from the community?
What I hear is, by and large, in agreement with what I thought. There are a few people who during boundary hearings and things came forward and really wanted to keep the two-year schools. Since the decision was made about the boundaries and the announcement was pretty much made that it's too late right now to undo all this, it hasn't been, I guess, a heartfelt enough feeling that it's been kept in front of us. I haven't heard that again since then.
Gee.
My opinion is that if several years down the road we decide it would have been better to have left the two-year schools, well, we can always go back. But I suspect that that won't be the case, that we will like the 4-year schools.
I've lived in communities where changes have taken place, either the building of one school to consolidate several or what, and what has to happen is that essentially you're successful in some way. You win a state basketball championship like Westmore, or you qualify right away for the football playoffs, and it just builds itself. After a couple of years, those fears kind of dissolve as the school gets its own identity.
Right, the identity will be a part of what has to go on, and I'd like to think that identity and success didn't depend on athletics.
I know.
But if that's what it depends on, then by golly, we better be good at it. So.
But unfortunately, a lot of times that's what draws a community or rallies people around.
Well, that's true.
Success could be anything, but that tends to be one of those that immediately draws
People
them.
feel some pride in that.
Yeah, and I know that the board has also studied places like Edmond and Westmore that have gone, that have gone through this
Right,
process.
and some schools in Texas. I mean, people have gone quite a few places to look at schedules and look at all the kinds of things that have gone into this decision. Haven't been just based on what we think right here in our little committees. We've looked around and asked a lot of questions.
So the board doesn't feel too battered and bruised about all the decisions they've had to make?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Anytime you make a decision that's going to affect people's real lives, it's a little uncomfortable. But like I said, I'm confident that what we're doing is going to be the best thing for a lot of kids. A lot of kids who right now may not stay with us. That 10th grade year, going to another school and another set of teachers is a real convenient time for some just not to ever come back.
Mm-hmm.
If they're committed to school, they're committed to the kids they'll be with, they're committed to some of the teachers will be committed to those kids. I think we have a better chance of keeping more kids in school. Never mind the high achievers, they're going to have more things to stay involved in. I think we're going to keep more at-risk kids, for lack of a better term. I think we're going to keep them with us longer, have more years to try to reach them and teach them.
And I think that's probably going to be the way it works out, too.
Well, I hope.
We'll be back in just a moment with 2 students from Central Mid High School. Our student guests this week are Jonathan Queen and Sarah McKenzie, and we've changed the rules a little bit this week, and we are going to let Mrs. Sexton interview the students instead of the reverse, which is what usually happens. So they're yours. They're Madam.
Okay.
Yes.
The first thing I wanted to ask is, what is it in schools that kids worry about?
Their reputation with their peers, I think some people worry about, but I really don't worry about that.
I would say reputation with the peers is a big thing. A lot of people worry about grades, social standings, things that they do outside of school, worried mainly what their friends think about them, or even what their teachers think about them.
Are there things that schools can do to help kids with what they worry about?
I don't think there's much they can do about the social worries, but maybe some of the other things, I don't know.
If there's any way, teachers do the best they could to help the kids be successful in the classroom, which if you're successful in the classroom, I think it'll carry all over to how you are outside of the classroom. So I think if you just work real hard in the classroom, that'll carry over and that'll make you successful in other things, which will make you feel good about yourself in better ways.
Mm-hmm. Does the issue of the two high schools impact you at the ages you are, or is this something only seniors worry about, or is this something, or this year's juniors, or is this something that everybody's got high on their minds?
Well, we've been discussing what high schools we're going to be going to, but we haven't really been worrying about it. It's not a really big deal.
Well, I thought about it a lot because when we start looking at most of my friends, there'll be a bunch of us that'll be going to North, and then there'll be maybe one or two of us that'll be going to Norman High, which really separates us, and those two kids feel more left out than the other ones do. Just the fact that they're leaving the group when most of the group's going somewhere else. So most of the kids my age, I think a lot about it.
Mm-hmm. Are you confident that both schools will be good places to be?
Well,
is there a sense that one will be less good than the other?
in some aspects, I think some people think that, but I'm not really worried about it. I think it'll be pretty much equal.
I think it'll be equal in many ways. Most kids, they think that just because North will be new, it won't be as good as Norman High because it's not as experienced or something like that. When I don't see that coming. I think they'll be both equally
Equally good places to be.
equal good places to live
Okay.
or to go to school.
Well,
Yes.
you can live there. That's kids pretty much do.
Right.
Do you think that the sense of equality comes from having, I know at Central we spend a lot of time with the kids figuring out who's going to be with them where, and that seemed to relieve a lot of tension when they suddenly realized that a lot of their friends were going to be with them. Do you think that has helped to give that sense of equality?
Yeah, that's definitely made people feel less, singled out or like they're the only person in the entire school going to Norman North or Norman High.
I think it helped a little to realize that, yes, some kids would be going, you'd still have friends with you, but I think it also made a lot of people realize and wake up real quick and realize that they're losing it. They're not necessarily losing a lot of their friends, but they'll have friends that won't be going to school with them anymore. Well, a lot of them don't realize that there's kids from West that are the friends that they'll also be going to school with now, which is what I think about because I have a lot of friends at West that will be joining me at North.
Okay, did you find that to be true when you started looking at how it would break down?
Yeah, I left a lot of my friends from Longfellow behind at West, so I'm going to be seeing them again at Norman North.
Ms. Mahan and I touched on keeping at-risk kids in school longer. Do either of you have a sense of how that might work or things that people can do in school? Now, I realize things that happen to kids don't all happen to them at school, and the things that happen at school don't always determine how they do, whether they do well, whether they drop out, whether they stay, whether they go. But what can schools do differently to give more kids a feeling of belonging and more kids a feeling that if they stay with it, they'll be successful?
I think just the idea that the teachers really working with the kids, because a lot of kids will come to school because that's the only place where somebody will smile at them. That's the only place where somebody will tell them that they did a good job. And I think just the fact that you work with a kid, yes, they may struggle, but just the fact that somebody's working with them and they know that somebody wants them to succeed. And I mean, just the idea that somebody wants them to make something of themselves, that'll keep them coming back. Just the fact that they know somebody cares about them will keep them coming back and coming back. If that's one person out of 1,000 that they may know, that's the one person they're going to keep coming back to because they know that one person really cares that they succeed in life.
Sarah? You can botch you a little time there.
Anything to add to that?
Well, I really am not sure.
That's okay. How about career education in schools? Do you feel like you've been given a picture of what is out there that you might do at the end of school, at the end of VOTEC, at the end of college, at the end of whatever it is that you've decided you want to do? Have you been given enough of an overview that you feel like you have lots of choices, or does that have to wait?
Well, I'm not really committed to any career yet, but I think I've been given lots of opportunities to learn about lots of different things, and it's been pretty, well, there's been a lot of variety that I've been exposed to at school.
Good.
So.
I don't see myself set into one career that I'm really looking into, but the schools really help me point out or find my good points and the things that I am strong in and the careers that would suit me best for my personality and for my skills. And I really think that's helped because there's, some jobs that I maybe think about doing, but my characteristics would not work well in that position. And I think that's helped me a lot to show me what jobs I can think about singling out towards maybe looking into doing and what ones are probably not going to suit me best.
And where did this happen all the way through school, or did this happen at a certain place?
I think the first time we really started talking about it was near the end of our 8th grade year, and then we've discussed a little each year on through there. We take several tests, that tell us different careers that they think would fit our skills and stuff, but we start talking about it a little in the 8th grade. Every year it gets a little more involved in what you talk about it and how deep you go into it.
Okay. And then, what in general would you suggest for schools to do more of, or less of, or differently? And I know that's not going to be the same for every kid, but in your experience, where do we fall short? Hey, that's a good sign. You guys must be doing a great job.
I think that you talk about that's a big one. I know, for example, that you're a very good artist. I think you're interested in drama. I don't know if you're in band or orchestra or not, are you?
Orchestra.
Orchestra, okay. So you have some very specific fine arts interests. Do we need more of that sort of thing for your interests, or is what we have to offer seem to be what you need?
Well, some of that stuff most of that actually I do outside of school.
Okay.
So, that takes up a lot of my time. I'm not sure if I'd be able to handle any more of those fine arts things during school and still be able to do the core classes.
Okay. Jonathan?
The opportunities like through the music or through the arts educations and all that other stuff, I think it's great. I think we need to try to get more students involved. There's a lot of students out there that don't do anything but just go to class and then go home. I think we need to get more people involved, and I think that would not only would that pull students together, it would make people that maybe feel that they're not as, useful, or I'm not sure what the word is, but it'd make people that feel that they don't do as much, get them involved and make them feel better about themselves and give them opportunities to grow and make themselves even stronger in different fields.
Okay, I know the way that you approach your schoolwork is very different. The two of you are very different in that respect. I've had you both in class, so I know how you operate. How do you learn best?
I do lots of reading at home, and that's how I've done most of my learning.
Okay, so it's not really so much what we do in the classroom as what you choose to do on your own.
Yeah, it's mainly outside of class.
I don't like to read. I dislike reading a lot. And I guess I learn best through activities. I guess when you're trying to learn something, instead of just sitting down and reading it out of a book or just sitting there and listening to the teacher talking to you, finding some way to do group activities or just activities on yourself, maybe putting in some form of a project that'll make it interesting, and maybe even trying to fool the students so they think they're
They don't
playing.
know they're learning.
They're thinking they're playing a game, but they don't realize they're learning anything till after when you tell them, and then that really clicks on that, hey, maybe learning can be fun if you just do it in the right way. And I learn, I guess, best that way. Reading is just not really my thing. I'm not a strong reader, which I dislike about that. I don't like the fact that I'm a strong reader. But I don't know, I just don't learn as reading as well. I learn better through communications and working with other students.
What kind of classroom setup works best for you? I mean, you're saying that you really feel more comfortable in the learning process on your own outside of school, but what kind of classroom setup seems to be successful for you? Or is it one where you just go away and leave you alone?
Well, bookwork is something I'm really good at, and most students seem to hate that.
Okay. And you're comfortable with
And
that?
I'm really comfortable with bookwork and
Okay.
really concrete tasks.
Okay, real different learners here. Yeah.
So the challenge is for the teacher is how to reach them both at the same time.
It definitely-
In the same hour, in the same classroom.
You got it. You got it.
Well, for the kids that we're having trouble reaching, you mentioned getting kids more involved in arts or in other kinds of activities. Do we need to reach out in a stronger way with the activities we had, or other activities we need to add? Are there interests that we're just not hitting that would bring those kids in, or are we just not bringing them in?
I think you're just not bringing them in, because there are lots of activities and you just have to look to find them. They're everywhere.
Is that your sense too, that there's plenty there?
There's plenty there, and I believe that it's just not the school's part to bring kids in, it's also the students' part, which I think lacks a lot at some schools. The students have got to get their friends involved, got to get everybody to come. It's not just the teachers and the school's part to get the kids to come. It's got to be the kids. The kids are the main part in the school. So if
Yeah,
you
I
can
guess.
just take one friend, that's one more person that went to that activity than usually went. And I think we need to try to get, not only to get the teachers to try to get the kids involved, we also need to get the students to get the friends involved.
Because I guess the bottom line for anything in schools is that the teachers can do what they can do, the school system can do what it can do, but the bottom line is that the kids have to buy into it and commit to it and do for themselves what needs to be done.
And at a certain point, they have to take some responsibility for their learning as well. And I think both of our students here have made that point. I want to thank you, too, for putting yourself on the spot. And I know it's difficult because you had no idea ahead of time what questions were going to be asked. And I want to thank you very much for doing this
Well,
morning.
I've enjoyed it.
Good. And we'll be back next week with another Capital Ideas.